Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Wiggle Racer. Comrade left us, so now you have to deal with me, Mr. Davis. Cause I'm the same person, isn't that ridiculous? Enough with the shenanigans. So we left off getting our intro and end screen set up, and the very first thing we want to do in this part of the video is get some code working. So make a new layer, call it actions, and click on the frame, tap F9. There we have our fancy schmancy actions. Well, what are the very first things we want to do? Well, first of all, we want to get rid of our end screen, right? So we'll say remove child, and what did we call it? MC end screen, right? And if I run this, and hopefully it doesn't break, because we've only done one line of code, you can see we only have the intro screen, but it doesn't work yet. Well, why doesn't it work yet? Because we haven't added a listener to our start button. We need to add an event listener to our start button so that when we click it, it exits the intro screen. So besides getting rid of end screen, we can bump this down a couple. We need to add our event listener. So if we say MC intro screen, and underneath our intro screen is our button. We called it BTN start. We're going to add event listener. Make sure you spell that correctly. And what are we listening for? The mouse event dot click. And what do we want to do when we click on the start button? We want to say exit intro screen. All right. So now that we have that there, next step is creating that function, right? Exit intro screen. So right below removing our end screen, we'll say function. What do we want to call this? Exit intro screen, obviously. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it. Exit intro screen. It's expecting the type mouse event. And remember I said don't worry about these import statements. If they're there, they're fine. If not, no big deal. We're not returning anything, so it'll be void. And voila. Voila, I guess. What do we want to do when we exit the intro screen? Before we do that, let's put some comments just so we know what's going on here. So add event listener to start button. Get rid of end screen at start. And then here, when start is clicked, exit out of intro screen, right? Fairly straightforward. So how do we exit out of the intro screen? Well, we're going to need to remove the child, and we're going to need to remove the event listener from our start button. So let's copy this line up here, paste it, and instead of adding, we just want to remove. There we go. And we'll say remove listener for start button click. And then we just need to remove, what are we removing? Sorry, we're removing MC intro screen. I'm just changing some comments here. We're going to remove intro screen from stage, or technically our little invisible container that separates the stage. And just know that it's getting rid of the intro screen, right? That's not rocket science. So if this works correctly and we run, now when we click on, what's it called? When we click on our start button, our intro screen goes away. Awesome. Let's set up our end screen, and we'll just create a function. And I guess it's not too important what we do with this right now, but we'll just say function add end screen. And how about for this one, we take in a string, right? So we'll say message. Oops, I guess say message. Okay, we'll call this we call it display. Yeah, let's call it display. It'll be a type string, and it's not going to return anything. And I'll explain how this is going to work in just 1 second. So what this is doing is we're making a function called add end screen, and we're going to take in a string value. And this string value is whatever we pass in. We can actually move that over into our end screen text, and we'll test that in just a second. But first, let's actually get our end screen to work. So the very first thing we have to do is add our end screen to the stage. So we'll say add child, MC end screen. All right, and we will add end screen to stage. Then we need to add our listener for our restart button, right? So I'm going to copy these two lines up here from the top, and I'll paste it down here. Oops. And we're not listening for MC intro screen, we're listening for end screen, and it's not BTN start, it's BTN restart. And what we want to say is exit not intro screen, but exit end screen. Okay, so we're going to add event listener to the restart button. Just clean up these comments, and we'll handle display later. But what this is going to do is it's just going to add the end screen to the stage and then add the event listener to the start button. But now we said we're going to listen for this exit end screen function, right? So what we need to do is create that exit end screen function. It's going to be very similar to our exit intro screen function. So we can just copy, let's copy this line here. So I'm going to copy it, go down below here, and I'll say when restart is clicked, exit out of end screen, right? So it's not going to be called exit intro screen, it should be called exit end screen. And for now, that's all we've got to do. So what do we need to do when we exit the end screen? Well, remove end screen from stage, right? So we'll say remove child MC end screen. But before we do that, we need to get rid of what? Our event listener, right? So let's actually type this one out manually. I'm going to say remove listener for restart button click. And this needs to look almost exactly like what we've got right here. So we'll say MC end screen dot btn restart dot remove event listener. We're going to remove the mouse event dot click. And then we are going to get rid of or stop listening for the function exit end screen. There we go. So this will exit the end screen. And then what do we want to do? We probably want to reload the intro screen, right? So we'll say, oops, reload the intro screen. So how do we do that? Well, reloading the intro screen is really just going to be adding the child, right? So we're going to say add child MC intro screen. And then what we need to do, add back our event listener for mouse click, which is up here at the top. So I'm going to copy it, paste it down here. There we go. So now we should have this thing that every time we start our game, well, nothing's going to happen. So we need to handle that, right? What happens after we start our game? Let's make it go directly to the end screen. So in the exit intro screen function, let's say add end screen and open close parentheses. And there's a problem with this, and let's run it and I'll show you why. Maybe it'll let you get away with it. I don't think it will, but we run this now. See, I have an error, and the error is saying incorrect number of arguments expected 1. Well, that's because in add end screen, we're expecting what? A string, right? A string that we've given the name display. So what we can do is say, inside of these parentheses, let's pass it a string value. In this case, it'll be called a string literal. Anytime you put anything between double quotes, it's called a literal, and you're not using a variable. We're going to put the word test, right? And just to make sure this is all working, inside of our add end screen function, we'll say trace out, right? Display. So we'll say whatever is in this display variable. So if we did it correctly and everything works, it'll pass in the word test and it'll trace that out to our output. So let's run this. And we wait, and now when we click, okay, it's exited our intro screen. It has given us the end game text, given us our end screen. It displays the value test like I said it would, so that's great. And now if we click restart, it goes back to the intro screen and we can keep playing this forever. So now let's actually do something with the text that we pass in to display. So underneath on our timeline, I'm going to double check what we named this. So go inside of here, we called it txt message, right? So back to our actions. When we get this display string, right? What we want to do is set MC endscreen dot txt message dot text, because we're accessing the text property, equal to whatever display is. So what this should do is, set message to be display text, I guess, or display value we passed in. So now if this works, when we pass in the word test, it should actually say test in our title. So Wiggle Racer, start, and it only says EST. Oh, okay. My font is a little weird and doesn't handle capital letters very well, so if I get rid of capital T and run this, then I believe this will work correctly. So Wiggle Racer, test. Bam, there we go. And every time we do it, it'll keep passing in the word test. Great. Now we actually need to get our game set up. So let's set up our player that our character and our enemies will be using, right? So let's lock and hide all the layers we have so far. We'll make a new one. Just call it workspace for now. That way we have something to work on. And if you remember, in the very beginning, we made a movie clip called Racer Colors. And what I'm going to do is just drag this onto the stage. And we're going to tap F8 to turn it into a movie clip. And we're going to give it the name of Racer. Okay? So now if you go inside of Racer, it should just look like our Racer Colors movie clip. But that's because it contains our Racer Colors. So inside Racer, we should just have our one movie clip. There shouldn't be multiple frames. And inside that should be our Racer Colors with the different colors we made earlier. So back into the Racer movie clip that we just made, we need to give our Racer Colors movie clip inside of it an instance name. So we're just going to call this Colors. All right. And we're going to rename this layer to Colors, and we'll make a new layer for Actions. And what Actions is going to hold is a couple things. We're going to make a function to pick a color, and we're going to store some variables in it, like whether or not the player has finished the race. So open up the Actions tab. First thing we're going to do is create a Boolean. So we'll say var, and we'll give it a name of finished race. It'll be of type Boolean, and to start we'll just set it equal to false. All right. And we'll say this will be used to keep track of whether or not the racer can't type today has finished the race. And we'll make a function, and we'll say function pick color. Yeah, that's all we really need. It's not taking any arguments, it's not returning anything. And this will set the, I guess, racer's color to a random color, right? So what we want to do is we need to go to and stop to a certain frame on our colors frame, right? Well, how many frames do we have in our racer colors? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we need a random number between what? 1 and 4. So if we go back to our actions, how do we get a random number between 1 and 4? Well, let's make a variable. We'll say var, and what do we want to call this? It'll be the color frame, I guess. We'll say color frame, and it'll be an integer, right? So we'll set it equal to math.floor, right? Of, what do we want to floor? We want to floor math.random, which will give us a number between, what, 0 and 1, times, well, let's say, what do we want? 3, I guess, 3? Let me think about this 1 second. We need to say times 4, because math.random will give us a number between 0 and 0.9999999. Remember, it never actually reaches the number 1. So math.random times 4 will give us between 0 and 3.9999999. Rounded down will give us 0, 1, 2, and 3. But we need 1, 2, 3, and 4. So outside of this last parenthesis here, we just need to add 1. And if we go back, and did I mess up the naming convention? I did. Instead of colors, right, of our racer colors thing, let's just call it MC colors, because I almost messed that up. Let's rename this. So MC colors as an instance name instead of colors. And now go back into our actions, and all we have to do is say MC colors dot go to and stop color frame, right? So what this is going to do is say get a random number for selecting color. And we can make a little note saying we'll need to update if we change the number of colors. That'll just be a heads up for us later if we decide we want more than 4. And then we'll change MC to be the proper color. So once we have that set up, we go back into our main stage. Well, we want to test this out, right? So we have an instance of Racer, and I'll give it an instance name right now of just MC Racer. And if we go under our actions, we can test this out. Just at the very start, we can say MC Racer dot pick color. And if this works, it should randomly pick a color for our racer. We run it, it's blue. Okay, maybe that's just dumb luck, right? Now it's red, yep. So it is working. Every time we run, it should be some different color. So green, red, okay, great. Oops, wrong button here. Let me undo that. Okay, so let's test this a little smarter, right? Reloading our game over and over is kind of a pain in the butt. What we can do is when we add when we click on our start button, we can just change it there. So every time we click exit intro screen, or that happens, it'll change our racer's color. So to start, it's probably going to be flickering because we haven't told it to stop yet. We click start, it goes to blue, yellow. Okay, so it does hit every color. Cool. So now that that's done, let's get rid of my racer. We know that it works, and we'll mess with that later. Before I go any further, I just realized that I did not center my movie clip. You can see the crosshairs a little off to the side, so I'm going to fix that really quick. I'm going to go inside of this, I'm going to select it, and center that up. Save, bam, and now this little circle here is what we're going to rotate around. That's no big deal that it's outside of the way. You can actually use your free transform tool and just drag it back to the center, and that's all you really have to do. So I'm going to get rid of this again because we're done working on it, and save and make sure we didn't leave anything weird in our game. And there we go. Good. But all we really have right now is an intro screen and an end screen, right? So let's go ahead and get our game set up so that way we have a section in our code that'll handle the part of the actual game. So to begin, let's go into our actions. And what we need to do is no longer add an end screen when we exit our intro screen. So just delete that line out there. You can comment it out if you want to remember how it works later, but we're going to get rid of that. And what we're going to need is we're going to need an enter frame event in order to handle our our movement and all that. So let's go ahead and do that right now. We'll say add enter frame listener, and we'll go stage dot add event listener. And what are we going to add? We're going to look for the event dot enter underscore frame, all caps. And what are we going to call? We'll call the update game function. Oops, game function. Well, we don't have that function yet, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So right below our exit intro screen function, let's create our update game function. And we will say, oops, function. How do we spell this? We said update game, capital G. And we're taking in the enter frame event, so we're going to be expecting an event. We're not returning anything, so it'll be void. And that's about all we need for now. And so what we need to handle here is we need to check to see if our game is started or if our game is actually playing. We need to check the state of our game. Is it in the intro screen? Is it in the end screen? Or is it in the game? How do we do that? Well, we're going to need a variable for that. And right below where we added our enter frame listener, we're going to create a string. So I'm going to say var game state, and it'll be a string. And by default, we're going to set it equal to intro. All right. So all we're doing is holding the word text in our game state. And let's put a comment on this here. Say current state of the game is when we start our game, it's going to go straight to the intro screen, right? So that can stay as intro. When we exit the intro screen, where do we want to go? We want to go into the game. So previously where we had add end screen, what we need to put is game state equals some value. Well, where is it going? We want to send it to the game part of our game, and we're going to store that inside of game state. So to do that, I'm just going to say the word game. All right. So now that we've set game state equal to game in our update game function, we can check to see if what game state we're in. So we're going to say game state dot, oops, I'm sorry. Actually, we're just going to trace this out. Just say trace game state. And once we have that done, oops, and we run, you should see in this top, when we start the game, it'll say intro over and over again. Then we click start, it'll say game, 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 game. And finally, when we're done, when we go to the exit screen, we'll change that to end. So can we do that right now if we add the end screen? Right, when we add the end screen, we're going to be in the end screen. So let's go into our add end screen function, and we'll just say game state equals end. All right. So now that we know that that all works, what we can do is basically in our update game, if game state, so we can check what the game state is. We'll say if it's equal to game, then we'll do stuff related to the game. And I'm going to end this video here, but right now we have all the pieces besides our actual game parts. So we have our racer, right, in our library. Where's my library? That's not my library. This is my library. So we have our racer, right? And inside of racer, we have actions and colors. The colors just contains a copy of our racer colors movie clip with all the different variations of what our player could possibly look like. In our actions, we have whether or not the player finished the race, and we have a function called pick color that will call once when the game starts to set the color of our players randomly. And then besides that, we have an intro screen and an end screen. So see you in the next video.